TC Hydro. One of the first 6 maps added to the initial release of Team Fortress 2. A lot of people played this whenever it first came out, considering it's one of the first 6 to be released. But as of now, it seems like 0 people are ever playing. You might be able to find a couple of servers that are hosted by third party, but they usually have 2 players and over 200 ping. Hydro is unique in the fact that it's the only official territorial control map Valve has ever released. Which is disappointing since the concept of TC is unbelievably cool. This is an attack and defense map, but not in the traditional sense. Let's take the concept of CTF 2 Fort. One part of your team attacks, the other part stays back and defends. You go to each other's bases, grab their intel, bring it back to your base, capture it, and you usually do this up to at least 3 times. So there's room for error. But with Hydro, you only have a point. Both sides only have a single point to be captured. Since both teams have to capture a single point, you have to split up your team into 2 groups. One for attack and one for defense. Now this isn't unique to Hydro. Capture the Flag and even the other CP maps do this all the time. No, that's not what makes Hydro unique. What makes Hydro unique is that it actually emphasizes the roles that classes play. For example, a Demoman's role is to be a defensive class alongside the Heavy, the Engineer. Scout, Soldier, and Pyro are offensive. And support classes follow the namesake. Hydro will actually emphasize your defensive skills as that class. Using Dust Bowl as an example, many players go Demoman to take out the sentry nest that almost always exists around the end of the map, usually because it's in an area where a Scout, Pyro, or Soldier cannot reach without getting absolutely destroyed. However, in Hydro, going Demoman would not always be the best idea when it would actually be a better idea to keep the team semi-even, to split up teams from one team, to stay in the role to take out everything else. Thanks to not being open-ended, not having a bunch of weird corners, Soldier can take out all the sentries, Pyro can cover ground control, Scout can do damage, but for the most part, his main purpose is to be a distraction and go for the point. A Demoman in an area like that wouldn't exactly work out better than the offensive classes will. That doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means that you would be better suited to staying behind and being defensive as a Demoman, considering that's his purpose. How else does TC_Hydro support all the classes? One way is branching paths. Every time you capture a point, not only do you take over their base, which feels really good, but you also open up different paths to go through to get to their other base. There's almost always 2 to 3 paths. There is always at least 2. What this means is that there is more than one location to go through to get to an area. There is one area, however. I know I said always, but I didn't realize it in the middle of making this video that you can only go through one pathway. However, I still stand by what I was saying, and that it supports all the classes. Just expect to die here a lot, but never expect someone to take over this middle area. It would be way too difficult to keep there. Essentially what this means is that players like Scouts, Soldiers, Demomen, maybe even Spies can go through this area, probably even more, but in this other pathway, Medics, Heavies, Pyros, potentially Engineers, and Spies can go through this area. That doesn't mean you're forced to. It just means that this is the better path to take for these classes. That doesn't mean that everyone's going to be following these either. But in terms of map design, it does show that it is possible. But if it was really that good of a map, based upon what I've just told you, it wouldn't basically be dead. Like I said, barely anyone's playing this. As I stated earlier, every time you capture a point, you take that base and then you move on ahead, and you start doing the other paths that you weren't able to take previously to go and get the other point. Which means for new players this would not only be confusing, but for the game developers, this seems like an absolute fresh hell. Trying to no-clip just to find certain areas actually took me some time. It didn't take me forever, but it did take me a little bit to kind of find where everything was. This isn't a bad thing in of itself. This isn't a new thing either, but it definitely requires work. What I would recommend if they were to ever update Hydro is to have it so that way instead of whenever you cap the round ends, it just moves on to the next point, moving your spawn point further, and etc, etc. Now tell me, to those of you who can remember playing Hydro, wouldn't this be one of the best things ever? Granted, I imagine this would make developing it very hard, which is probably why they didn't bother and they were happy with what they got. But there is an issue. Another reason why this isn't being played is that while this is definitely made to support all the classes and their purposes, it's also not a perfectly designed map. It's very open, which is not bad in of itself, but brings up problems. Snipers will have it very easy here unless there's another sniper or if people notice you, because there's very little to hide behind, and what you can hide behind is not close enough to the the point or is very enclosed, leaving you vulnerable to anyone who's inside, especially if they're explosive and better shot than you. You can kind of see how this would kind of make new players nervous when playing on it. However, Hydro is really good looking. It requires a lot of work in gameplay design. Sure, it works for all players and their purposes, but for areas like the satellite, yeah, you can see what kind of becomes an issue. There's nowhere to hide behind, and there's only one way in there. If you're not fast enough, you can't get to them, and then the only thing you can do is kind of hope you're a demo man, soldier, or something of the sort, and shoot inside, and hope the explosive damage gets them. At the same time, this goes to show that the demo man is very valuable. The best way to fix this area is to completely remove the bottom stairway path, since it was never used that much in the first place. In fact, I didn't know what it was for years until I actually looked. It's just for a single spawn point. Have it so everyone can walk up this pathway up to there. Perhaps you can keep the area that surrounds it, the walling and stuff. Otherwise, I don't really see any purpose for it to just be two pathways. Or, like I mentioned earlier, the only one way to go through this one path. Granted, it's not a bad path, it just needs a second path. I remember trying to go through this area earlier as every possible class I could and dying all the time because everyone would meet at this area. That was an issue for me, especially since I had to deal with bots, since this was the only path I could go through. This isn't a bad thing, but it's basically just two circles in a hallway. It's a barbell and you have to go through that area. Even if there is two more areas to go through, little spider webs, it is still an issue. So the map design isn't perfect. In fact, there's a lot of fundamental flaws that could have easily been fixed with a couple of updates. Or the one major one I brought up. Throughout all the positives I brought up, and throughout all the negatives I brought up, Hydra has one thing that no other map will ever achieve. It's both a detriment and an amazing positive to the entire map that makes the whole experience an absolute blast. And that one thing is the last point completely proves everything I had said earlier. The map emphasizes all of the classes' positives and weaknesses, especially their roles as offensive, defensive, and support. This is one of the most grueling things you can go through, and if you win it, you feel really good. If you're up against a really good team and you also have a really good team, once you finally get into this endpoint, it's just like arm wrestling. Almost at the end, but anything goes. They could still lose, and it looks like it's against them, but you never know. Defending was harder than attacking, unless you knew what you were doing, in which case attacking was harder than defending. But if you both knew what you were doing, this would be a living hell. If you successfully defend this, not only does this give you another chance of going back, reclaiming their base, and continuing to push back, but you also have the self-satisfaction of knowing that you have just completed one of the hardest tasks you will ever accomplish in this game. At least when it comes to PvP, and not some weird third-party shit. And just imagine if you've gone through a long, grueling battle, and you finally go and you take over the base, taking over the last territory as the attackers. It is great. However, as I said, this is also a huge detriment. Everything I just listed off seems like everything people want in a game, but it's true, it also has its flaws. As defense, you're giving little to no time to start building. Also, that point,
according to the Wikipedia for Team Fortress 2, capture rates for the final point takes this long. For one person, it is 5 seconds. For 2, 3.33 seconds. For 3, 2.72 seconds. And for 4, 2.4 seconds.
That's not too bad in itself, but it throws out the whole point of territorial control. Well, not really the whole point, but it kind of throws out a lot of what I was saying. The tactics of splitting your team up, it's kind of thrown out. Because your defense wasn't strong enough, or your offense wasn't strong enough, or both wasn't strong enough, you were unable to breach their defenses, or to defend yourself. This is your last chance. And that, just this area here, one of the best areas of a map I have ever experienced. But you went from having it so two teams would split up to go and attack and defend, to now just defense. So now it's just attack and defense, which isn't bad. I like that. I just feel like the idea of not being able to go and recapture theirs kind of is, kind of annoying. Because in all reality, you should easily be able to go and do it. They just don't let you. I like the idea of, oh shit, this is our last thing, but we can still go and take over theirs. But that's besides the point. That's completely personal. I just think it's kind of At the same time, I also fucking love it. So I'm split, and I'm mostly leaning towards I fucking love it. It's so easy to fail this. You cannot fuck around. You have to go and place your shit and get fucking ready. Because red team is only a light jog away. You have maybe 30 seconds before anyone gets there. That's if we're talking just walking, no rocket jumping, or stick jumping or anything of the sort. It's a very fun map. It just has its flaws. I'm not sure how Valve did it, but they're able to make defense very easy to become very weak, and also offense to also fall in the same line. It's actually really easy to fuck up as offense here too. You've got to go and get them. You don't want to stand in a group. That makes you more vulnerable. You want to split apart and do as much damage as you can. It's exactly like raiding a base, their final base. But when it comes down to defense, it's just them trying to defend. This is their last chance. They have 5 minutes or so to defend. If they can't do it, they lose. Almost all classes are helpful here, but as you'd expect, defense is, as usual, recommended to be chosen for this map, and maybe a spy? Perhaps a medic, but it's best to stick with only defense unless you have a spy who knows what he's doing and a medic who knows what he's doing. Other than that, engineers will be your healer, demos will be the point defender, and heavies will do generally everything else. And they make sure that as defense, you feel as vulnerable as possible. They make attack feel very confident and cocky. Let me be honest, if I could just watch one Team Fortress 2 competitive play of this map, I would be so fucking happy. To see all these pro players, like, fucking using things I didn't even know was possible, it would be, like, fascinating to learn just from this map what all is possible. A lot of people will tell you, and it's pretty much split, the ending point is bullshit, or the ending point is the best thing ever. Bear in mind, I'm speaking a lot of this from concept, nostalgia, and of course, from bots. I don't really have much else because there is no servers. But even with bots, I still had a fantastic time, especially when it came down to defending, especially when I actually won. I actually got to play this with my friends since I can actually host servers, which just happens out of the blue. And defending this was so hard, but goddamn was it fun. Anyone's opinion on this is absolutely legit. It is a bullshit map. It goes by so fast, and it's so easy to be spawn camped. Specific choices have to be made, and you have to get shit right from the start, regardless of how your point of view of it is. This is a fantastic ending point, and the map itself is also pretty fantastic. I actually haven't even gotten into sudden death, which is one of my favorite parts of this map. See, that's also another flaw with the map. They really shouldn't have a timer for capping points, because there's only 2, and if you have a really good defense and the offense isn't able to get through it, which happens often, usually before a stalemate, it'll go into a sudden death, which is one of the most funnest things I've ever experienced as well on this map, especially since it's one of the few maps that actually supports it anymore. Which basically means everyone has 1 life. If you die, you're dead till the next round. This means changing a lot of tactics, but it also has a problem. Let's say you have 2 engineers just staying at the base and not really moving anywhere. Yeah, imagine that for the next minute or 2. It's kind of frustrating, especially since from my recollection, they can't hear you if you're dead. So you have 2 defenders trying to find each other, or even more frustrating, one of them gets to the point before the other one does, and it's like a scout, or maybe it's not. So one of them will decide to go backwards, and it's like, oh, god damn it. And it's just up to chance there, man. Regardless, sudden death is actually one of the funnest aspects of Hydro. And it's actually a really smart move on how to fix the timer problem. But at the same time, I guess at the sacrifice of sudden death, a timer shouldn't really be there. Or if there is, it should be a lot longer. So in conclusion, TC Hydro is a map that was one of the first 6 to come out when Team Fortress 2 was released. It's a perfect map for learning classes, but it's terrible in direction. You can get lost easily, especially if you're new. Even whenever you've gotten used to this map and played a lot, you still kind of get a little bit lost every once in a while. Not entirely, you can easily figure it out, but there's still those times where you just go one wrong way and then it's like, well, shit, and then you gotta go all the way back. That's not even terrible, it's just learning and eventually you get used to it. Throughout the entirety of the map, it emphasizes all the class's purposes, attack and defense and support, until the ending of the map, where it becomes basically attack and defense. It's not bad, but it needs work. People who get to this point will always say the same thing. It's an adrenaline rush, it's fucking awesome when you win it for either side, but you don't have enough time to defend. Any kind of rushing is super easy on this ending, and a majority of players will quit here because they just don't feel like they have a chance. There's a lot of problems with the map design in general. I could mention the satellite map and its weird hallway stairs thing, which when you follow leads you to spawn point, which leads you to believe that this is for either offense or defense to go through, or in general anyone, so that they can avoid any form of combat and then still get out. but in practice, it's kind of useless. The map is also smartly designed to work for classes. It just doesn't work, for the majority of other reasons. This is a perfect map for learning how to do anything with any class. Offensive engineer, rocket jumping or sticky jumping, soldier and demo man, scout, sniper, but with no direction, it would always end in a stalemate. Or it would also end in a sudden death, which is when things get interesting, since a sudden death rarely happens. And by rarely, I mean it almost never happens in like any TF2 map, like barely happens. And in this one, it happens a lot, which is exciting. Before sudden death, you would basically just go out, die, and then respawn. Now you have to play carefully and smartly. There's the issue of playing with randoms. A lot of what I mentioned can only be achieved through competitivity and with a group of friends. Its full potential isn't exactly realized with randoms. TC Hydro needs an update. It's amazing how well it's actually held up over the years. Playing with bots was still just as fun as playing when I was on, my Xbox 360 years ago, except without the charm of having a new game and with actual people. But that's besides the point. It was still just a blast. Maybe it is nostalgia. Maybe I'm just a shitty critic. Maybe you learn to accept fucking opinions. Let an old man have his dreams. And maybe one day TC Hydro will come back. Via matchmaking, maybe, Valve, you know what I'm saying? And that's all the time I have for talking about Hydro. Like, I mean, I have an infinite time limit, but, my internet sucks, so I'm not gonna sit here and keep talking. This is a 2K video at 60 fucking frames. Do you think I have the 350 kilobyte download speed? That's my shit, man. Hell. Hydro will one day come back. It's all reliant on the community's efforts and Valve's efforts. To end off, thank you for watching. This was a video that was hell to edit. This is actually my 7th re-recording. There's some bits of old in here, but this was a hard video to edit. I'm actually surprised it got finished. To clarify, I'm not saying it's impossible to play defense offensively or offense defensively. I'm just saying the map emphasizes the attributes of those classes a lot better than if you were to not use their attributes or something like that. Regardless, this is going to be a new series I'm going to be doing, except not as bad. I know all the flaws with the video so far, not all of them, I know a lot of them, but I do want to hear your critique and what I could do to improve on this. Well, I'm not going to keep you guys waiting, because I'm imagining if I do make this into a series, it's going to be in a playlist, and you guys are going to be watching this, and you're just going to be watching this credits, and it's going to be super annoying to have to get up and try and pass by it, so I'm just going to quickly get by at this bullshit. Thank you for watching. Make sure you give this a video a like, especially if you're on a playlist, because that means less people are going to be watching it. And yes, it does help. It lets my shit get seen. I don't care about fucking counts. I need it to have my shit seen. I spend hours upon hours on my videos. I have a job. I don't have time to do this, so now I definitely really need the confidence boost. Share this to friends if you want. And hey, I'm not a know-it-all. I'm pretty sure I got a lot of things wrong here. This is just my recollections, concepts, and whatever I was able to do with bots, considering this is all I was able to do, recently at least. Again, thank you for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end, and have a wonderful motherfucking, after night. That's day, afternoon, and night mixed together. You don't get a good morning. Fuck your morning, because that means more work. Okay, fine. After nighting, I did it. Nailed it. See ya.